Hey there, Bridget Lynn Dolgoff and the Urban Farm Project and Conscious of Economics. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to tell a story because, well, it's not a story, it's actually fact. And I'm not trying to attack anyone, but I just wanted to, it's not funny. I have this dot on my third eye here. Anyway, I wanted to wait until I kind of gave these people, a total opportunity to do the right thing and take personal responsibility for their actions. And up to 6 months ago, I would have never said anything really publicly. Probably wouldn't even really told friends of mine or made any statements. But I'm different now. And I'm trying to teach people and educate people about things so that they don't feel that it's their fault or overthink things, especially in the spiritual community. Because there is a lot of spiritual elitism out there. And the other big issue is that there's no personal responsibility in a lot of spiritual cultures, especially in America. When you take ancient spiritual, religious type things and you put them into like a white American structure, they're used as a weapon against people. And so when people are out there seeking information or try to enlighten themselves or educate themselves or try to find practices, especially in America, they're often thinking like, what the fuck just happened? I mean, what just happened? And then they try to figure it out, or they try to communicate it, or, get a broader understanding. And those people will attack them. And so this is kind of a story about that, about the story about me showing up, totally being fully present and totally responsible, over communicating, and in the end, being told what to think. My personal spiritual, and being a woman and a businesswoman, being totally disrespected. Used, information being withheld, and then completely locked out and ignored. And so this is kind of like how it started. So a lot of people are going to be really pissed off about this video. A lot of people are going to be really upset. And, like I said in the past, I probably wouldn't have done something like this. I mean, there's a lot of situations that I may revisit and I may be starting to put out in the public of situations that I've been personally in. So, I'm not doing this out of anger, but I'm doing it as an education for people out there that are on a path who have been, spiritually trampled on or violated. And so that you don't think that you're crazy, that you can still use your critical mind, and don't allow, especially spiritual people in the spiritual communities they shouldn't be allowed to continue on in these manners, right? Okay, so it all started with I needed a venue for a couple of my classes that I want to teach once a month. So somebody on Facebook said, hey, go to the Reno Buddhist Center. Well, I hadn't been there in years and years and years, I think since the Japanese man who founded it in 1947, was still running it. And back then they still had like, kerosene heaters and that kind of stuff. But I went there for a drumming ceremony. A man who was white in the area who had been walking a native way had been doing these drumming circles for a long time. And I attended a lot of these drumming circles in my late teens and then hadn't really done a lot of them. So when I found out that he was doing some solstice stuff, I, went over there. Anyway, so I haven't been there in a really long time. So the founder died. And so this white man and his wife, the reverends there, are running it. And so, they're trying to upgrade it and do a lot of things. So it looked really positive, when I went in. So I had a meeting with the woman, the Reverend woman, I think Reverend Shelley. And they were looking for people to rent space because they have turned the one side house now into, like a little mini holistic center where they have people renting their spaces. And I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in just renting space to do my 2 classes, 2 hours for both classes. Each class was once a month. So anyway, we had a great conversation. I thought we hit it off. And so I scheduled to do my body deconstruction class for pain management and also my medical shamanism class. And the body deconstruction class I just set at the 3rd Sunday of every month, and the medical shamanism class set at the 4th Sunday of every month. So anyway, I was talking to her about farming work and if I could put up some of my flyers for all my farming classes that I have going on. And she kind of looked at me and said, basically that they needed help with their garden beds out front. And I probably didn't, I'm going to take this on myself, this part of it. I didn't ask enough information about the garden beds. So I assumed that, she just wanted me to take them over and make them look nice and produce a huge amount of food in them and all this other stuff. Great. I'm super good at that. So I said, I'd be more than happy to do the labor and, planting and, manage basically for 2 seasons, spring and summer crops. And she seemed great with that. So anyway, so I went over there on a day that I had time and assessed the situation. And then I went and got a whole bunch of wood chips and I had them delivered and I had a pile of wood chips so that I could get started. And then they actually went out of town and they were in Japan. And so I emailed her about, I was going to be going over there, but it had been raining. So I was waiting for the rain to stop. And she said, no worries. Whenever you get a chance to go over there, we're in Japan. And if anybody says anything to you, just tell her that, Reverend Shelley has approved it. It's all been approved. So no problem. So anyway, the following weekend I went over there and I ended up putting in like 21 hours total over about 4 or 5 days. And, I was trying to talk to people there on the site and people just didn't really want to talk to me. And then if they did talk to me, they had a lot of negative things to say. Just about lots of things. And I think there's a lot of people who've been going there for a long time that have a lot of resentment. And a lot of people that don't really want to participate in helping the place. And so one of the reoccurring themes is that I had people talking to me about how they ran the garden beds for the center and that nobody really cared what happened. And people would just buy things and plant them in the garden beds. And so these people would give up. And I said, well, that's just not going to happen. it's not going to happen to me. I have a business, the Urban Farm Project, and I've done so many volunteer gardens and everything else. So I'm thinking about these garden beds, and I'm thinking about how much lettuce and, green leafy vegetables and, how much I can grow in there, which would be like an enormous amount. Not only would they have tons for their restaurant and their charity dinners, but literally the reverends could eat out of it like 3 or 4 times a day for spring and all the way through fall. And I was thinking about all the food I could harvest out of there, like as a reward for doing the work. And so the other thing too is like everything I do with the Urban Farm Project and my other businesses is in the open. So, I like to post things about what I'm doing and videos. And, I don't want potential clients and people wanting to help me do a build in their yard or consult or whatever to drive by there and see it like as a freaking shamble. You know what I mean? I'm a perfectionist. And so when I do something, I do it good. Like I don't mess around. And I don't screw around. So anyway, so I show up there. They have lots of things in their garden beds that shouldn't be in the garden beds. Strawberries. They had a whole bunch of mint that have rhizomes, that grow underground. That's long-term plant stuff. That stuff should be planted somewhere else because you get all the stuff growing in the soil. You can't get it out. And then it'll suck out the nutrient and then you can't grow anything in these garden beds. It's like a long-term problem. Garden beds are short, fast. Let's, pound out tons of produce, get that done and replant, pound it out for at least 2 seasons. As much produce as possible. So we put in nutrient density, kind of stuff. So anyway, so I had to spend a lot of time. I pulled a huge amount of weeds. I dug up and relocated tons of plants that were in these garden beds into other locations. Dug up the soil, cleaned it all out, added wood chips, the whole 9 yards, and even planted some spring seeds in the garden beds, That's what I was finishing up with. I had 2 garden beds full of seeds. I planted some armith and some blue kale, all heirloom seeds, by the way. So basically, I planted probably like, $40 worth of my own seeds. Mind you, I had them in storage and I had to use them. So, I thought I would give, in a good way. And also, what else did I plant? I planted spinach. Oh, a whole huge bed of spinach. All stuff that likes spring. And if it gets weird weather, stuff that grows good. All of it's massive leafy stuff. So you just make salads out of it. You just cut that stuff up and just boom, ready to go. High nutrient, high dense nutrient. So anyway, at the end of putting in all these 21 hours and all this other stuff and planting seeds and all this other stuff, the reverends got back from their trip and the man reverend, of the Buddhists, Reno Buddhist Center came up to me and was talking to me, and he didn't say thank you, it looks nice, anything. So I was talking to him about his trip, and he said, yeah, he was pretty tired, blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted to communicate about this whole community garden thing that I keep hearing about with the gardens. And that's not going to really work for me. I came there and I have all the tools and everything. I don't really need anyone's help. There were like probably 20 or 30 people who came in and out of there who maybe 3 of them actually talked to me and the rest of them were totally snobby. Like I was some kind of like hired slave. And just the whole vibe and attitude was terrible. So I just wanted to let the Reverend know or communicate about, what people have said to me, and about the garden beds, and that community garden wasn't going to work for me. I didn't need to oversee a community project. And, I just at this point was just not attached to everything that I had done. Like I could just totally walk away. But I was going to give them the chance to communicate. And so I told them, I said, I don't really need anyone to, come here and help. Nobody's come here and help. Like I've been here 21 hours pulling weeds and relocating plants and trying to get the soil up to par, and planted some spring seeds. And I just told them about the story about the people that were talking to me about the garden beds, and they had resentment. And, I didn't out the people. But I just said, like, that's really not going to work for me. And I said, I had talked to Reverend Shelley about this, and I said, obviously, I didn't really communicate. We didn't communicate enough, because if I'd found out that this was a community thing, like I wouldn't have been interested in doing it. Why would I? And I said, because, this is what I do for a living. This is one of my side things that I do for a living. And I can get, the work of 20 people done in a short amount of time. And I don't attend their church. So I'm not really part of their community. I was looking at really producing some really great food for them, making it look beautiful, enticing, when people came up, and doing like a super great job. I don't want people going to Home Cheapo and buying some freaking tomato plants and planting them, and they have aphids. And now all my crops and my food all have aphids, and I can't get rid of them. Just totally destroy a whole thing. Like, I'm anti bringing things in. Like, I'm all about direct seeding, kind of a thing. So I'm explaining this to him. And meanwhile, I'm also talking to him about the trees on the property. They have these cherry blossom trees that are in the so wrong environment. They have been scalded to death by the pavement and the sidewalk in the sun, to where there's like so scalded that the Cambria layer is actually split open towards the street side. And this was a problem to me, because I'm thinking, you planted these trees in a desert environment, then put pink rock around them, and put them on the pavement. You would have needed to paint the stalks white. That's why, you see in orchards, they paint the stalks white, is to protect them from the sun. And these are trees that need kind of like a more moisty kind of community planty environment, so that they don't get scalded. And so they're all screwed up. Like they have these big balls of, bug infestation. And it's so horrible. It was a horrible thing for me to see. And I was trying to explain to him about, these trees need to be removed. They have tons of bugs. They've been scalded to death. This is a horrible situation for these trees. And these bugs that they have are going to adapt to going into the other environment and then spread, through the neighborhood. It's not a good thing. And, these Buddhist people talk about sentient beings. Well, I look at trees as some of the most important sentient beings on this planet. And so trying to, explain to him what's happening. So anyway, showing him and, in a nice way, and kind of things that I see, that should get some help, be supported. Anyway, during this whole thing, I'm talking to him. I talked to him about, not wanting to do a community thing, and just wouldn't be really happy about planting a lot of stuff and spending all this time and having people come and buy things that have bugs and disease and stuff, and planting them into all of the produce, with the potential of adding a whole bunch of like bugs and things into the plants that could destroy it, or, contaminate the soil and stuff like that. And he says, And, I tell him I could do this for a business and I'm volunteering to do this. And that, I have all these heirloom seeds, like I'm explaining to him, and he actually turns around and looks at me. This is when I knew there was a serious problem. That, here we have white people practicing spiritual things and advising people, and they don't get it. And they're using their religion as a weapon. And so he turns around and he looks at me and he says, well, when we have those thoughts about other people or, things that are going on around us, it's all about us. And we really need to go within. And my brain goes, he did not just tell me what to think. And it took everything I had to keep my composure, because it was totally disrespectful. Number one, I don't go to your church. I don't adhere to your religion. In the past, I've gone to lots of Buddhist things and I've lived in different kinds of ashrams and I've studied all kinds of things, but that's not my thing. My thing is shamanism. And in shamanism, we use whole brain function and we don't meditate all the time. We don't check out. We can be awake and doing multidimensional work simultaneously. And we stand up and we deal with things because it's about the truth. So I was shocked that it totally hurt me as a person. And I had to go and talk to my friend, one of my good friends, about it. And because I kind of, I should have expected it. So then I said, to him, okay, beyond that, it's still a deal breaker. If this is going to be a community endeavor or whatever, it was my fault that I didn't know that, or that I didn't communicate enough with Reverend Shelley, because if I would have known, I wouldn't have come here and done all this work. Because I don't need to do work for other people. So it's a deal breaker. If it's going to be a community thing, it's a deal breaker. So tell me now or whatever else. Don't try to keep me here doing the work by mind fucking me, right? So the whole time he never said thank you for all the work. He never said anything. He just spent a lot of time trying to control the situation from his spiritual place. So then, after I say it's a deal breaker, blah, 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 he said, well, it's always been a community thing. And then he goes into his stories. So in Buddhism and a lot of other things that I've studied, you're supposed to get away from your stories because your stories are fiction. So he gets into this whole attachment thing with the gardens and how he really likes to plant these marigolds along the front there, and they buy them, already grown kind of thing, which goes against this whole concept of, direct seeding and, you're bringing in disease. And, so on my level, I'm thinking about shamanism. And I'm thinking about, this is what they're doing, is they're operating in disease. So they want to, metaphor, the garden beds. You want to buy something that already exists from some place that didn't love it and, just planted it as a thing, sells it. You don't know where the soils come from. You don't know what the seeds are, where they've come from. You don't know anything about this plant or the diseases or bugs that it has. And most of them have serious bugs, which will infest your yard over time. And I'm thinking that's what they want to do is they don't really they're white, and they don't really grasp the whole concept of sentient beings here, because the whole yard looks terrible. And the trees are totally effed up. And they want to plant things that come from a corporation to keep paying the corporation. Like, they don't really understand this whole, thing of sustainability and personal responsibility. I mean, especially to the earth, to your property, to the building. I mean, come on. So I'm looking at it from a whole shamanism standpoint, thinking, what the hell? And I've bumped up against this stuff before. This is why I'm telling you this story. So when you hit up against this stuff, you're going to see it. And when your heart and your gut go, ugh, there's a reason why your heart sunk, is because you're being shit on and you're being manipulated and you're being controlled, right? So anyway, it goes into this whole story about planting it and that it's always going to be a community thing. And I said, well, that's a deal breaker for me. I'm communicating this to you as a means to come to some kind of resolution about it. And so, this is probably really not going to work for me. It's just not going to work for me. So, anyway, that was kind of the end of the conversation, kind of a deal. And so, I don't know, it was maybe like a few days later, or no, like the next day or something. I had to go over and water the seeds, right? Because I'm still doing my part until I know for sure what's going on. I just don't drop the ball because I'm having a complicated situation. I committed to doing something, so I'm going to carry it out as far as I can carry it out. That is my responsibility, personal responsibility as a human on this earth, to fulfill my agreements and my contracts, good, bad, indifferent, or ugly, and stay conscious during the whole episode, right? So then I go over, they have like one garden hose. Well, they had a garden hose on the side of this one house, and, like I had to use it to water. So all of a sudden the reverend's on me, which is fine, and this other guy, blah, 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 and he's like, felt bad for the other guy because he's like a serious doormat. You could just tell. So anyway, it was like this total conflict around this garden hose or whatever else. I just needed 5 minutes to water the seeds that I planted and be gone. I didn't have time to chat it up or have a conversation or whatever else. And I don't like when people's energy beelines right on me. I can feel it coming. And I just get out of the way as fast as possible and let that energy go somewhere else, because I'm not going to, be ran over. I don't do ran over very well. So anyway, I went to the other building, pulled out the super long hose, got the stuff watered. He's like, oh, you found another hose. Oh, it reaches. He's trying to talk to me, the Reverend. I'm like, yeah, I'm gotta go. So I run back over, get it watered, turn it off, roll the hose up, blah, blah, blah. And I'm out of there. It's just like, and this other thing too, a couple days later, there's a lot of drama that's going on at this place. And I don't even really go inside. So then a few days later, I just wrote Reverend Shelley an email just saying, look, I didn't really talk to you about this whole community garden thing. And, I spent 21 hours fixing it up. I did plant some seeds, but I really need to be done. Like, this situation's not really going to work for me. And if you could find someone who could care for the seeds, until they grow into produce or whatever, just support them and whatever else. But, this is becoming a situation that's really not healthy for me. So could you let me know if you can, find someone to manage the seeds? And so it was kind of like a back and forth email for a couple times. And I just said, there's just like way too much drama going on over there. I mean, just way too much drama for me, to deal with. Like, I just wanted to come there, help you with the garden. It's turned into this, like major ordeal. So, and I didn't really say anything to her about her husband or anything like that. I'm still trying to deal with this, in a sane way without, totally losing it. So she said, yeah, no problem. Do you want to be reimbursed for your 21 hours? I said, no, through emails. You guys can just keep it. It was part of my agreement. And so I'm just going to hold to that. And I said, I will just pay you for, I'm going to be paying them. At this point, the agreement was to pay them $50 per class to use their facilities for 2 hours for each class, which is fine. I said, you know what? I'll just stick to, having my class there, my classes, and I'll just pay you for that. And the original agreement was that I pay her at the end of the month or after the last class for both of them. It was just kind of easier that way. So she said, fine, that's fine. And she said, well, we try really hard not to have any drama here or whatever. And I'm just thinking, wow, this place is like chronic drama. But white people, they freaking live off drama. They love drama. They love control and manipulation, So even in the spiritual, like you could take these ancient cultures and these beautiful like religions and practices. And man, once white people get a hold of them, they destroy them and turn them completely into something that is sick. So anyway, it seemed like everything had been balanced out, blah, 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 blah. So, I went there on that Sunday, the 16th or something like that of April. And she was there. The room was super cold. I asked for a heater. And, I taught my body deconstruction class. And then, talked to her about the payment, putting in an envelope, put it in the donation box for the church and blah, blah, blah. And, that I would pay her after the next class. And so, so I had a class cleaned up and we left. We're gone. So the next week I have my medical shamanism class and I get there at 2:45. My class starts at 3. I've got students there. I had 3 people who decided to leave, who got there before me that I didn't know because I couldn't get into the building. I had one of my students who was calling the Buddhist center to see if anybody would answer to let them know that the door's locked and we can't get in. And then I was going around with the front door with my other student ringing the doorbell because there were cars out there. Apparently there were people inside. And no one would come to the door or open it or talk to me or whatever. So we tried for 20 minutes, I think. We kept ringing the doorbell, kept trying to call, all kinds of stuff. So I lost 3 people for my class because they looked at me as being disorganized. I'm like, I'm not disorganized. So I ended up, after my class, I rerouted it to another location. And after my class, I sent her an email saying, by the way, I couldn't get into the building and, I had my students and nobody was answering the door. Nobody was there to let me in. The door wasn't unlocked. And, my other student was trying to call you and nobody was answering the phone. And so just want to know what's going on, right? So, no response on the email. So I wanted to give them enough time. This was April 23rd. Today is May 2nd, 2017. So those are almost 2 weeks or, a week and a half that I allowed them space that maybe they might be busy to get back to me because I'm taking personal responsibility. And, it's just gotten down to the fact that they're ignoring me. They won't talk to me. That's drama. 100% drama. And a lot of it has to do with they don't have the upper hand over the situation because they they're sick. That's all I can say is they have some serious problems. They have some serious issues that are going on. And I only have had like a couple months of dealing with them, I can't even imagine what it's like to deal with them like long term, and how crazy people feel that are going to their temple and trying to find something that the people who are teaching it don't have. They don't understand. So this is about my experience. So what I've decided was, after a certain amount of time, that I was going to tell my story, put it on my YouTube channel, because I want, if we're going to change the paradigm on this planet, then people need to become personally responsible, which means these spiritual people have to stop pushing their agenda onto other people and this elitist crap, right? The only way people are going to be able to get a manage on it or handle on it is that they individually wake up and they support themselves by listening to what's happening to them. Your heart sinking, your gut reaction, like when your mind tells you, did that person who has spiritual authority just tell me what I should be thinking? Because they can't cope with the fact that they're actually being communicated with directly, and they're used to putting their spiritual authority onto other people and making it their responsibility. So I could go within all I want, but we still have a serious problem here. They locked me out. They had an agreement, a financial civil agreement with me for money to use their facilities. They did not notify me and tell me to fuck off. We hate you. We don't like you. We don't want you on premise. They just locked me out, and they have decided that they're not going to communicate with me at all. And it goes back to how their place is a fortress. Only certain people are allowed in. They have all these eye holes so they can see who's coming, because they can't deal with people directly. They cannot have an honest conversation. They cannot uphold their agreements, and they are not being personally responsible. So, I hope in the future that they, can get their self straightened out, because they hold a very important position in the community, and they need to step it up, and they need to wake up, and they need to stop using their spiritual practices as a weapon against people that they don't like. Am I kind of a tough act to deal with? Sometimes, yeah, but you know what you're going to get, because I tell you exactly where I'm at. You don't like it? You can tell me you don't like it. I'm not going to take it personally. But when you attack me spiritually, and as a woman, and as a business person, my friends that are native were like, wow, that is like serious disrespect, like total disrespect. I said, I know. It's like I have to deal with the white world, but I try to deal with it in a native way, like walking the red road, the good road. And I adhere to that, because my path is everything to me. And I would never disrespect somebody or throw them under the bus like that. I wouldn't treat people like that. Not as a healthy person and a person operating in a good way on the good road with a good heart and a good mind, So listen to what yourself tells you, because your self is telling you the truth. Because otherwise you're going to take it personally that there's something wrong with you, and there's something you can't grasp, obviously, because spiritual authority is telling you something that you don't understand. because you're not grasping it, because you're trying to communicate and they're throwing it back on you that it's all your fault. And this is kind of like how this whole situation has happened. And the other thing too, like I want to point out, I've done nothing but give. I've done nothing but honor the original agreements, tried to communicate properly at every turn, was not listened to. It wasn't even, nobody even really said thank you or, about the work that I did. So it makes it even harder for them because they can't judge me. They can't write me off internally inside of them because they're the ones that has to live with, what they've done and how they've done it. So anyway, that's all I have to say. So that was my interaction for like 2 months with the Reno Buddhist Center. And so, hopefully out there, if you decide to go there, just be cautious. If you are already going there, please, please, please do a lot of prayer work. And don't allow yourself to be, thrown under the bus. And you have the authority. You have in your heart and your critical mind, you have all the tools you need to operate in complete spiritual alignment with yourself. And if you feel like there's a twinge of something wrong, there is. And no amount of people can tell you to go internal because it's all your crap. At some point, there has to be a talk. There has to be a communication. So, because that's what we do. That's why humans do. That's why we have a voice. We talk, we negotiate, we figure things out, we communicate. I mean, that's what we do. If you want to go, meditate all the time and somehow, project your shit onto other people, because that's really what the Reverend did. He totally projected his stories onto me. He projected that he was uncomfortable about my communication, and he projected that I needed to think and act a different way, the way that he does, or that he, tells people to. So anyway, be careful about the spiritual entanglements that you get yourself in searching. And listen to yourself. You are going to know when you need to get the fuck out of there, or you are going to spiritually die. And once that happens, you're a doormat. And so when you're walking the road, there are times where you need to compromise and you need to humble yourself. But there are also times where you have to stand in your own confidence and your own self-trust because you are following what the Creator needs you to follow, right? Put asunder. That's kind of a weird thing. Put asunder. Anyway, it's Bridget Lynn Dolgoff. Have a great day. Listen to your mind. Your mind will lead you and your heart will lead you. It's what I can tell you. You are your own authority and you are your own master. And you are the only one that can listen to your God, your Creator, your Buddha. And when it gives you signals in your body that things are not right, they are not right. Okay. And no amount of meditating is going to change that. Big love. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.